Hello and welcome back to Death and Taxes, your weekly live stream podcast from the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. I am one half of your hosting duo, John Humphreys, and I am joined, as always, by Gene Tunny. Gene, how you doing?
I'm going well, John. How about yourself? We've got a big night tonight.
I'm doing top of the world, Gene, as always. Another beautiful day in paradise, up here in God's own country. And yes, we've got a good guest coming up a little bit later. We've got the usual roundup of the economic news of the day, and we've got some information on what has happened following the potential end in the Iran war. Some information on the latest immigration stats, and then of course we've got our guest today is the leader of the National Party, Senator Matt Canavan, who's showing up. He'll be here in about 15 or 20 minutes. We're going to get through some of the economic issues, the first couple of issues first, and then we're bringing Matt on a little bit later to ask him about, well, his vision for Australia. It's only fair to let him have his say, but then also you, dear reader, have the opportunity to, or reader, listener, have the opportunity to ask some questions. We might ask some questions. And of course, the obvious issue of the day is the rise of one nation potentially decimating. I shouldn't say decimating. Decimating means taking out 10%. It's potentially going to take out 90% of the National Party. So decimating would be kind. But what can Matt do to address that? Is it stoppable? We will ask those questions when he gets here, and some questions about his family tax policy, his infrastructure policy, and what he calls, what is it, Gene? Hyper Australia?
Hyper Australia. Yes.
Australia on steroids.
He got that from one of his boys, that concept, that name. But
I endorse the idea of naming political concepts after whatever your kids say. That's a strong support.
Unfortunately for Matt, they don't vote, but it's an interesting concept. So I want to explore that with him, and what does it mean, and what's the government's role? What does he see? If he were in government, what does he see as his role in promoting that Hyper Australia as? I'd be interested to talk about that, what those policy settings are.
Indeed. So if you have questions that you want to ask Matt, please feel free to chuck them in the chat. I cannot guarantee that we're going to read it. We will get to what we can, as we always do. But if you have questions, comments, criticisms, please feel free to chuck them in the chat and we can go back and forth. But before we get to that, we're going to start with the Gene's Roundup. As I say every week, if you're a normal human, you're not watching the economic news every day. You're probably watching the World Cup and Australia beating Turkey by 2-0. Go Australia. And the rest of that sort of shenanigans. But it is important to stay up to date with the latest economic data. Don't worry, you don't have to. Gene does it for you, and then you can come here for 10 minutes each week and find out what you need to know. So, Gene, what is it we need to know?
Okay, thanks, John. Well, I mean, the big news this week, of course, is the peace deal between Iran and the US. We saw Trump at Versailles with Macron, and we've seen the deal being done there, and this has had a really, profound impact on the oil market already. We see the oil price plunging. So it's, I've got it there around 80. It's Brent crude's around 76 now US a barrel when I looked at it. So those oil prices are coming down, and that's going to be welcome relief at the Bowser, and hopefully that will start alleviating some of the pressure that's on our farmers and on people on the land. So just all around good news. I think there's the usual concerns about how long it will last, and also where do we end up. A lot of the critics of the Trump administration are saying, well, you're actually just going to end up at best with what Obama had, the deal that Obama had, and I mean at worst you could end up with something a bit worse. So it's I think it's good news relative to where we were a month ago, but really. I mean, it probably would have been better if we didn't get ourselves into this mess in the first place. So yes, that's the first bit of news. We've had some good news there, and oil price coming down. So really happy about that. The next thing I've been tracking is just the extraordinary news about SpaceX last week, which had its IPO. They only raised, they raised 75 billion. So it was a huge initial public offering, IPO. And what the price that was on the shares implied that the value of this SpaceX was over $1 trillion or upwards towards 2 trillion. I can't remember the exact figure now. It's made Elon Musk the world's first trillionaire, and it's got all people talking about, well, I mean, there's the Bernie Sanders folks who will be saying, well, this is all, why do we have trillionaires? They were saying every billionaire is a policy failure. Why do we have trillionaires? And I mean, obviously there's a debate about the value of innovation and the value of entrepreneurship and capitalism. So I mean, it's an important driving force in productivity and lifting our living standards. So I don't want to go down that route. But I do want to draw attention to the fact that, I mean, for some time now, we've had these, particularly the US markets, have just had this incredible exuberance, this enthusiasm relative to our market, for example, which is in the dark blue line below, and the two lines above it in the magenta or the pink and then the light blue, they're the S&P 500 in the middle there. That's the broad market index. And then you've got the NASDAQ composite on top, which is the tech stocks. And relative to where they were at the beginning of 2023, S&P 500 is nearly 2 times and NASDAQ's nearly 2.5 times. So you've got these really extraordinary valuations, and it's just leading to all sorts of questions about, are these valuations justifiable? Is this a bubble? Will we end up seeing a very substantial market correction soon? What does it mean for all our economic theories about the efficiency of financial markets? John Quiggin had a provocative post the other day, which I thought was a good read, about how this essentially, I mean, if you weren't convinced that the efficient markets hypothesis was not valid based on what's happened with crypto, based on what happened with all of the junk assets during the financial crisis, maybe this will convince you what's happening with share markets now. So I think there's a really interesting debate going on there. So that's one thing I've been following. I've also been following the ongoing, increasing penetration, adoption of AI, which is just extraordinary, and the models seem to be getting better and better. I mean, to such an extent that Claude Fable was banned by the US government for use outside the United States, or by use by anyone who isn't a US national, which effectively means that they'd have to ban the whole thing, because how do you make sure it's just US nationals using it? And what we see is that it is proliferating through business. I mean, all sorts of businesses are changing work practices. And I found this great chart on Macrobond, which is a data service I subscribe to through my business, which just shows how many jobs out there, the proportion of jobs that are in the description of the job on Indeed, that jobs platform, they're talking about AI skills. And Australia is, thankfully, I mean, we're toward the top there. I mean, somehow the UK is much higher. I mean, I have to wonder about that. But anyway, we seem to be up there in terms of countries where AI is a job requirement. So I thought that was fascinating. Just shows that ongoing transformation of the labour market. I'm not one who thinks that AI is going to lead to huge job losses. I think there'll obviously be some disruption, but I see AI is going to be more like a co-pilot with professionals rather than directly replacing them. So again, I found this all this news about the AI fascinating. Finally, the big news in terms of Australian data today was the new population growth figures. We see population growing around 1.5%. The government was proclaiming that the figures today show that migration is coming down. So we had migration come in at a bit over 300,000 over the year, which is one of the lowest annual increases for a few years now. So the government is excited about that. However, it just means that instead of having an extra Gold Coast come in net overseas migration every year, when we had the 500,000 plus just after we opened up from COVID, instead of that, we've got, say, an Ipswich every year coming in. So we've still got a very large addition to the population coming from overseas migration, and it's effectively 3 in 4 of the additional people in Australia over the year. So if you look at it, we've got our total population growing around 400 and a bit thousand a year, so over 400,000, and net overseas migration is roughly 300,000. So 3 in 4 of the new people in Australia are from overseas, and it's you can see that it's making a big contribution, particularly in Victoria. Victoria is getting almost as many overseas migrants as New South Wales, even though it's it's a smaller state, and the overseas migrants tend to favour disproportionately New South Wales and Victoria rather than Queensland. But obviously, we still have quite a lot here too. We're still getting a significant. We get a bit of a redistribution from other states in terms of net interstate migration, whereas Victoria is not really getting anyone from net interstate migration. So despite the cheaper property prices down there now relative to us, no one really is moving to Victoria, probably because of all of the usual problems we all know about, such as the all the debt and the failures of government service delivery and all the machete attacks you see around Melbourne on the news. Just extraordinary stuff. So, John, that's my roundup. I thought I'd just give a broad coverage of what's been going on. So to recap, we've got the oil price plummeting because of the deal. Lots of excitement about the deal with Iran. We've got equity.
Well, let me take you up on these one because you covered a lot there, and
okay, good.
I was I probably am not going to be able to remember each of the things I was scribbling down here, but obviously what I find interesting about this is not really the oil price so much as to the underlying discussion about the war. So, of course, jumping off on a cheeky segue on this one, so much of this is going to depend, of course, on whether the peace holds. This makes perfect sense. If there's a peace deal and the Strait of Hormuz is open properly, then, of course, this price should start coming down. Of course, this will take a while to be properly felt in the economy. It takes a little bit of while for the crude to get to where it's supposed to go, to get refined, and of course for the fertilizer to get moving and to be able to be used. So there's going to be some hangover an economic hangover from this war for a little while to come. But thankfully, if the war can be ended now, and the war was in a half-hearted phase for the last couple of months anyway, we've avoided the worst case scenario. So we did a bit of discussing about the worst case scenario in previous episodes.
Yeah,
it was something I think worth worrying about because it was possible, and it's better to be prepared and not need it than not be prepared and need it. But if we can find our way out of this war, then we will hopefully avoid a bit of an economic hangover that we'll have to live with for probably the next 6 or 12 months. I don't know how long it'll last, the hangover. But it is recoverable. And so could the world be going back to normal? The question is, will the peace hold? I think there's a decent chance it will, but there's something that needs to be understood in this. The peace can only hold basically if Trump accepts that he's giving up on everything he said he had to have. Because as far as I can tell, this peace deal doesn't give him anything that he didn't already have. So Iran has said they won't build a nuke. That's exactly what they said before the war started. Iran's opened up the Strait of Hormuz. That's exactly where we were before the war started. The US said they wanted Iran not to enrich at all. They're not going to agree to that. They certainly haven't yet. So does the bombing start? They said they had to stop backing their allies in the region. They're not going to agree to that. Indeed, they've got this peace deal, it looks like, to cover Hezbollah. And there was a request, a demand that Iran stops having ballistic missiles. They're not going to agree to that. So it looks like basically militarily the US won by shooting more of Iran's stuff. But strategically, it seems that Iran is basically ending this war with what it wanted, which is that they're not giving up what they call their inherent right to enrich uranium up to 5% for civilian use. They're not giving up their allies, and they're not giving up their ballistic missiles. So if Trump can accept that, if he can accept that he's basically going back to Obama's deal, but he's offering Iran more money than Obama did. If he can live with that, then we have peace. If after 60 days Iran says they still insist that they have a right to enrich uranium and the rest of it, will the bombs start falling again? Or another way to put it, if Israel keeps attacking Hezbollah during the peace deal and then Iran responds against Israel, will the US come to Israel's aid? These are the great imponderables. I don't know the answers to that, but
I think the answer to that's fairly clear. I think the US would come to Israel's aid. I don't think there's any doubt about that, is there?
Well, it's not clear to me at this point. Trump taking this deal suggests to me that he's got to know that it's not a great deal, right? That he's getting nothing he asked for. I mean, he can't be unaware of that, but he's doing it anyway. If he's doing it anyway, Israel does not want this war to end, right? They're quite grumpy that the war's ending, but Trump's doing it anyway. He must have a reason, right? So he must have weighed the pros and cons as he sees them. If Israel blows up the peace deal, it might be that he's more angry at Israel than anything else at that. So I don't know. Look, I can't read Trump's mind, but the point is, I can see a way for this to end. And that is if Trump just goes, look, screw it. I'm over it. I'll take the L. I'm moving on. Then the war can be put behind us. But there are lots of, landmines still to navigate, I guess. That's the warning I'll give you. So I am cautiously hopeful that we might get out the other end of this. But I don't think it's a lay down misère. I don't think it's all done and dusted. We do actually have to navigate these landmines for this peace to hold. But in the meantime, lower oil prices, happy days.
Yep, absolutely.
Where are you on that, by the way, Gene? Do you think the war is over?
Yes. Yeah.
So you think?
I think it's anything could happen, really. I accept that, but I think Trump will try and move on. I think he'll recognise that it hasn't gone well for him. He does seem to have remarkable survival instincts. I don't know how he does it. He has this extraordinary capacity to bounce back politically. So I think he may actually learn from this. I think it's probably. I'm nowhere near as worried about it now as I was, say, a month or two ago. We had that chat. Was it with Michael Arbin? I'm trying to remember who we had that chat with, where it looked pretty bad at one stage. Or your friend on the land.
It was Pete Rothwell. Yeah, Pete
Rothwell. Yeah, that was a good chat.
Well, maybe we should get him back because I'm still curious what the medium-term consequences are going to be from the lack of fertilizer. He did say at the time that's a slow boil. You're not going to see that straight away. So we'll see when and if that hits. Look, in terms of this, I like you am cautiously optimistic. But I think it's almost certain that Israel strikes Hezbollah sometime in the next couple of weeks. I think they already have, right? During this supposed week where they're setting up the peace deal. And Trump seems to be responding by getting grumpy at Israel for that. I think they almost certainly will strike again. If they keep striking, it seems, if they just keep doing it and don't look like stopping, I think Iran will eventually respond. So then it'll come down to, will Trump then get involved? So I think it's quite possible that an Iran-Israel war might continue.
Yes, yeah.
but I think that maybe the US won't get involved the next
time
I
see
around.
what you
and therefore
mean.
and therefore they wouldn't block the Strait of Hormuz. Therefore, we would still get our oil, because the Strait of Hormuz thing, I think that is a play against the US, not a play against Israel. So we would still be safe from that war, as much as I still wouldn't want that war to happen. At least in terms of the global economic consequences, we could dodge that bullet. Anna has no faith in Trump's autonomy here. A billionaire puppet of trillionaires. There is only one trillionaire.
At the moment, until Anthropic has their IPO, and then is it Dario? I'm trying to remember his last name. Their CEO, he will become a trillionaire, won't he? That's the speculation. So Anthropic with Claude, the AI. Yep.
And what was the next ones you had in here? Oh yes, the AI bubble. Look, firstly, maybe I'll leave it to another day, but I could do a partial defense of the efficient markets hypothesis, but I won't now, because we'll keep it going. But I do know there's an interesting
high-profile guest joining us soon. So
we do. I was just
very soon.
Wrap up there.
Go ahead.
The comments on these. There is a case to be made that these bubbles, while quite bad for the people investing and losing their money, can actually end up having an infrastructure benefit for the country it left behind, as long as it is a private sector bubble, and therefore it's the people who took the risks that lose the money. So that's one defense of bubbles, such that they are. In terms of the impact of AI, I agree with you. Current AI technology is probably just going to augment current jobs more than replace them.
Yeah.
The big question is whether we get AGI, of course, the real AI, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we'll never get that, but that would be a game changer in ways that I don't think we can imagine yet. So it's be useless trying to predict it. And as for this one, maybe we will. Well, on the population one, look, I just say here, there's two parts to this, of course. One is what you brought this up, I think, to show the impact of net overseas migration on Australia. The other part of this story is that it just keeps showing, as if we need another excuse for me to rant about this topic, the drop in birth rates.
Yeah.
Because this is a two-sided thing, right? So it's there is a big increase in the people we're bringing in, but Australians just aren't having kids. So there is a lot to unpack there, because both of those are good policy issues. So we will get our guest to opine on those in the near future when he comes in.
Well, you and our guest have both done your bit for the population. It's the others around, such as me, who are not. So you and Matt have both. I think. What are you? Yeah, because Matt's had 5. I mean, Matt's coming on soon, so we could talk about that.
He's got me beaten on that one, but look, I'll just say as well, with the net overseas migration number, look, it's what everyone talks about, and at some point you got to stop tilting against windmills. But as I've said to you before, I would like the conversation to also have a bit of a separate focus on the number of new Australian citizens, because there's a current focus on the number of people who set foot in the country. I'm also curious about the number of people that we're going to have stay permanently. So maybe PRs, we could look there, or we could look at citizens. Depending the way you want to skin the cat, most people want to try and address net overseas migration. But if you basically significantly winded back the number of people who could stay, you might find the people who come temporarily just show themselves out soon enough. So that's another one where I probably can't convince the world to use the data I want to use, but that's the asterisk I'll put over net overseas migration. It's not necessarily the only data point in that area we want. I just do you want to just quickly send a message, see if Matt's good to go?
It looks like he's good to go. Yeah, he's giving us a thumbs up backstage.
I'll start. Oh, sorry for that, Richard. I'm going to star your comment. We're going to get back to you. Throw that away, and I will invite the honourable. You're honourable, aren't you, Matt?
I think you keep it for life, John. I don't know. Even if you do dishonourable things, you still seem to get called honourable. So I don't know. We'll go with that.
The Honourable Matt Canavan, Senator for Queensland and leader of the National Party. Matt, thank you for joining us. I'm going to quickly adjust your name so everyone knows where you're from. But in the meantime, good to have you in here. And I'm going to throw over to Jim.
Good to see you, Matt. We can't see your shirt. Are you able to pull it
up?
Yeah,
I know. It didn't really go. It didn't get the shots. There's energy prices, and then the real productivity issue. I had my own productivity roundtable last year, and this is the shirt I made for it. But yeah, I just one major thing. Maybe we'll get onto it. Is the government just seems to have forgotten that. Remember, they had their own productivity roundtable. I had a real one above the cabinet room in Parliament House, and they've just dropped it. Anyway, it's probably the biggest economic issue I think out there.
Well, I don't think they've necessarily forgotten it. I noticed they did a productivity roundtable. They got a bunch of ideas, and the only ideas they remembered are the ones that had tax increase after them. So I think tax reform was there, but the only ones they remembered was screw people on CGT and take away trusts and what have you. So it's quite remarkably, I'd say those two things, especially the CGT, Matt. I'd be keen for your opinion on this. It seems to me almost designed as an anti-productivity measure from a government.
Yeah, look,
I had a roundtable.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I wasn't at their fake productivity roundtable, but I am not so sure what exactly came out of it. But I know some of the participants of that discussion have said since the budget that these measures were not discussed and certainly not outcomes from that productivity roundtable. What we saw in the budget, which has now had massive surgery done to it today, but 5 weeks ago, what we saw in the budget was effectively the reheated, re-microwaved Bill Shorten tax policy taken to the 2016 and 2019 elections, which were rejected by the Australian people, but obviously the Labor Party had never forgotten them and thought they could sneak them in. I agree with you. I think the capital gains tax stuff is, from an economic point of view, one of the worst changes because it penalises investments that are risky. And if there's one thing I think that really the Australian economy needs, it's an injection of entrepreneurial spirit, risk-taking. Large super funds now dominate the investment landscape, and they tend to be risk-averse by nature, given their liabilities, the long-tail liabilities they have. The preferences usually of people putting money away for their retirement. They're usually index hugging, right? They go and invest in the index, happy to get the sort of average return and say, well, we take a cut away, of course, take some good
Sorry, Matt,
out of that.
We're getting a little bit of feedback from your mic there. I don't know if that's
okay.
if your mic's hitting.
Maybe I can. Yeah. Oh, that's better. Is that better?
Yeah,
that's a bit better. Yeah.
Okay, right. I might have just been because I had my hand over the wrist. I'd never done that, but there you go. I've learned something. It's a wireless mic, but that's better, is it? That's better.
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah. We could make out what you were saying, so we didn't lose any of it.
So, so I was just saying we need to have a more risk-taking culture in this country, and these capital gains tax changes are asymmetric. They mean that investments that are high risk, potentially high reward, high capital gain and growth are penalised by this new system. And one of the key reasons we moved away from the nominal base system, from the real base system to one with a discount on nominal basis was to encourage risk taking. And I think the government's just throwing all of that out. They don't really understand the economics of this, and it's why you've seen such an outcry from the startup, the tech sector, and other risk-taking ventures in the economy.
Yeah, Matt, just on that, can I just ask, so they've given the startups a carve-out. What's happening with the explorers? So, I remember going to a lunch pretty soon after the changes were announced, that Rob Murdoch's lunch with a lot of the junior explorers, the mining explorers, and they're outraged over what's happened with CGT and what that means for their potential returns, because that's a high-risk business, right? A high-risk enterprise. Are they still badly impacted by they're not getting a carve out, are they?
Look, I feel like I should put a disclaimer on this, Gene, that I'm not your accountant and you need to go to your financial advisor for proper investment advice. I mean, I did read the media release from Anthony Albanese and Jim Chalmers. I've been up in Townsville today, so I read it on the plane on the way back, and I tweeted after reading it that after reading this, I think you really do need a tax accountancy degree to understand their changes now. It is so complex. So I put that disclaimer on this. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not sure they are sure what they're doing. But certainly, Gene, I didn't see any carve out described for explorers, for junior explorers. It did seem focused on tech and startups. So that's what I read. We'll wait and see detail in any legislation, which will presumably come to the Parliament next week. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I saw that, in fairness to the tech and startup industry, I've seen some comments from them, feedback today, saying that, look, these carve outs do show that there is a problem. I mean, if there was no problem, why would they have to carve out these industries? And some of those tech groups said, well, they feel a little bit it's unfair, because why would they be carved out when other risk-taking ventures in our economy are left to wither on the vine? And yep, there's the junior explorers, but look, pretty much anyone who mortgages their home and starts up a cafe, has a crack at a business venture, their dream. It opens a shop. It's very, very risky. A lot of them fall over more than normal at the moment. So, the government's just taking away all that cream. And the problem with the tax system, is if you lose your business, if you potentially lose your house, when small businesses do that, then you don't get any refund from the government on your losses. You just face the big tax bill if you win, and that deters then anything that might end up you losing your shirt or your house.
Yeah. Sorry, Gene, I don't know which of you want to take this, but maybe I've missed something. Other than the traditional carve out for venture capitalists, is there a new carve out for startups? So I probably just missed the news, but I imagine at least half of our listeners have too. So help us out here. I don't know, Gene.
There's something
what is it?
Look, there's something with people who use the employee share scheme. So those that use this scheme to provide equity for people in early startups of the business. As I say, I'm not exactly sure who gets covered and how that's covered. They're obviously schemes that are particularly used in the tech sector when it's seeking to raise equity early on. There's something around that. But beyond that, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work. Sorry, they're not my proposals, and it's not my stuff up. The government's presided over in these last 5 weeks.
We're having the audio issue again, Matt. So if there's something, I don't know, have you got your hand over?
If you really want me to, I could go. Look, I'm relying on batteries here on a wireless system. Batteries are infamously unreliable. So if you want me to go back to old analog wired, I could do that. Just have to have a bit of a break, but it's up to you guys. Is it back?
Matt, I insist that everything there should be powered with coal. I hope it is. I'd be disappointed otherwise.
The battery's probably charged by coal, but sorry. Let me know if you want me. You just say the word. We'll have a break, and I'll put the wide in. We should be right. Anyway.
No, we can still hear you well enough for now. If it plays up again, we might beg off. But I know when I told Gene you were coming in, he immediately said, "Oh, it's great. I've got a question for him. I want to go after him on this." So, Gene, having thrown you under the bus there.
I don't want to go after him. I'm just interested in your idea of Hyper Australia. I think that's interesting. I've listened to your previous comments about it. I just want to understand what you mean by it and what is the role of government in that. So what levers are you going to be pulling to bring about this Hyper Australia?
Yeah, well, Gene, it's probably can fill the rest of the show, but you just pull me up when you need to go an ad break or something. But what I mean by Hyper Australia is just more Australia. I think we've got the greatest country in the world, and we've built something quite amazing. I mean, 100 years after the first fleet, we had the richest nation in per capita terms in the world. Just 100 years. There was no real industry here, of course. An amazing achievement in our country. And so what I'm talking about is just building more Australia. And what I mean by that specifically is more Australian cities, particularly, more Australian families, more babies, more people. And to do that, we need more businesses, we need more infrastructure. And so in terms of your question, the role government plays, yes, there's a role for government to play to build, in my view, infrastructure, basic infrastructure that opens up new parts of our country. And we've done that through dams, through ports, through roads. These types of things can be and probably should be provided by government. In terms of then helping new cities develop. We need low tax, low regulation environments for people to take that risk, move their families to somewhere else. I would argue then on the more babies and more families front, we need a tax system that encourages family formation and the creation of the next generation. I said in my first speech 12 years ago that our current tax system massively penalises families who decide for one parent to stay home to look after their own child. And I would suggest most families want to do that at least for a period. Most, I think, would prefer that for a year, 2, maybe 3 years, maybe for the preschool years where one of the spouses stays home to look after the child. If that choice is made in our current tax system, it comes at a huge penalty because we're taxed on an individual basis. And that means the tax-free threshold, the lower tax thresholds are only available for one or for each person if they both work. And so a double income family can get 2 tax-free thresholds, a single income family only 1. And to put this in stark relief, if you're on $150,000 or so across 2 households with the same number of kids, but one is single income, the other is double split income, you're looking at around a difference of $12,000 to $14,000 a year in tax difference.
Right. Yeah.
If you're a household with the same income, same number of kids, and that's not equitable for a start. At a horizontal equity viewpoint, it's completely unfair. But it also then has a number of inefficiencies, I believe, in pushing people to both work, therefore making it hard for people to make that decision to have a child. And yeah, we've got a fertility rate now of 1.5 babies per woman, and that means, as I say, pull me up if I'm talking too long, I get passionate about this, but that means if we've got a fertility rate of 1.5, you can determine your next generation by the simple rule of thumb of dividing that figure by 2. Use 2 because only women can have babies, I think. The science is evolving fast, but I think that's still the case. So you end up with 0.75 in our case, 75%. You times that by a current population, that gets you the next generation.
Right.
So this next generation will be 21 million, 75% of 28 at the moment. Then it'll be 16, then it'll be 11. So in 3 generations, about the end of the century or just beyond, we'll have just 11 million people descended from those alive today. I think it's a huge existential threat for our culture, for who we are, therefore our nation. It should be a clear target objective of an Australian government that wants to maintain Australian culture and who we are and what we've built here, to lift that birth rate, making it easier for people to have kids. So, you know, that overall, in a nutshell, is the Hyper Australia idea. We need more energy, we need more industry. I didn't cover those things as well. But you know, as I say, we've got a great country. We just need to use more of it.
So I wasn't going to interrupt you on the income splitting or the fertility issue, both of which are passion projects of mine as well. I've been ranting about for years. We've talked about the income splitting before, and I think we're in furious agreement. The one tricky question I've got for you then, I don't know if it's tricky, but is it now official National Party policy?
Look, we're working on this. It's something we want to do in the Nationals Party, and I would say all of my colleagues are supportive of the concept. What we need to do is bring forward a detailed policy that's costed we take to the next election. So I'm confident we'll have some form of taxation reform that makes for our tax system to be more family friendly before the next election. There are some variants of whether you do income splitting or provide some relief just to the individual taxpayer in a family situation. I do like, and I've always wanted the income splitting idea because I like the idea of treating the family unit as a team. I think that sort of just generally helps too, bind people together, keep families together. That's important too. But yeah, we definitely need to provide more support. So we're working through. We've got a group of people, but from both the Liberal and Nationals parties at the moment. And I must say, there's a lot of Liberals now that are very on board with this as well. I think it's time. I think we've seen the birth rate decline to a level where we're just a bit worried now that if we keep going down below 1.5, and plenty of countries are below us now, we'll never bring it back. It'll be almost impossible. So now it's a critical time, I think, to show a preference for family formation. We have to try and encourage that, show leadership on that front. But you see this government, the Finance Minister, Katie Gallagher, said on Mother's Day, of all days, she said on Mother's Day that she thinks all children should be shipped off to childcare as soon as possible.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of a human rights issue for people to have go to childcare and be educated from a few months old. And look, not only was it incentive to mothers to say that then, it's just totally wrong. All the evidence shows that in those early years of life, and very early years of life, if a child can spend more time with their biological mother and father, their development outcomes, their later in life success is very much linked to that. So why wouldn't we invest in that and try and support that?
I'm kind of glad she said it, because it's such a ridiculous thing to say that shows a distinct contrast in I guess, the purpose of children.
Yeah, the priorities.
And who they belong to. Like the idea that the state should raise kids versus the family. Who's honestly going to love them more? And I got another little point on this that I rant about this far too long as well. I'll try to keep it relatively brief. But I mean, people aren't having as many kids. You'd know that. Now you're fixing the problem. You've put both Gene and I to shame. But the idea is you go to all the hassle and difficulty and trouble of bringing a child into the world, and you have late nights and difficulties, and then all of their best times you ship them off for someone else to raise. I mean, look,
I understand why. Yeah. I mean,
you wake up, you spend 1 hour rushing to get them out the door, and then you rush out the door, drop them off with someone else. Someone else spends the time actually raising your children. You pick them up at the end of the day when you're already exhausted. You, depending on their age, sort of shout them to clear their room or something, and then put them off to bed. Go to bed exhausted yourself, and you look around and you go, "Well, was that worth it?" Well, anyway, I rant on.
Well, look, what I'd say, John, from my perspective, I agree with C.S. Lewis that the ultimate profession is the homemaker. The ultimate profession, what everything is centered upon in our society, and what we all do ultimately is to protect and support the people that make our homes, that look after our children, and create the area that is the space of respite for all of us in our own home. I go to work to provide to pay for. We've still got to pay off a mortgage here in our home to help our kids go to school. That's to support the home. My job, it's a very important job, but really what I'm doing when I'm asked, why do you do this? Why do you spend so much time away from your family? I'm doing it because I like to think my kids take pride in what I do to make for a better country. And so my wife, who has spent much more time raising her children, she did take time out of the workforce while the kids were young. She's had in our relationship, she's had the ultimate profession. She's had the most important thing. That's the most important thing. And I should say, our defence forces. What are they to do? They're to defend our homes. Right? That's what they're there for. We don't do it in and of itself, but our culture has sometimes got it around the wrong way, where people are, I think, taught, or we're certainly encouraged to think that we should live to work, not work to live. Our life is in our homes and with our children. And yes, a strong economy, a good job, but a good career are all very important things to have that family, but they're not the end of themselves. The end is
it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason, and that's because there's some truth to it. And as you would know, the underlying thing, ignore the economics you get out of the newspapers. The underlying point of economics is not money maximization, it's utility maximization. Yeah. You want utility maximization, have children. In my not very humble opinion on that. With preemptive apologies to Gene, two quick issues on this issue still, or maybe just one, and then I'll shut up. But I'm going to pitch you an idea that ATA has been talking about for a few years, Matt, that I think you've probably seen from us before as well. It's kind of related to income splitting. It's a family-friendly tax policy. The idea of giving a family an increase in their tax-free threshold of $10,000 per child. And that's a child-specific element, not a marriage-specific element. Of course, income splitting, you only get once, normally, unless you can income split with your children. This would allow effectively some amount of income splitting, quote unquote, with your children as well. So there's an idea for you to.
Well, John, I didn't want to steal the thunder of my colleagues, but I mentioned earlier when you asked, and maybe it was a bit of weasel words, but I said we'd do something on tax to support families. There is these competing models. Do we do income splitting, or do we do exactly what you've just described? Do we see through the tax system on an individual basis, using the existing tax system in a way, make some alterations to reflect the facts that people with young children in particular face higher bills, higher costs, and they deserve some relief. So, look, there's lots of different ways to skin this cat. As I said, I've always had this preference for income splitting because of the way it combines a team. But really, we're at such a dire state with our fertility rate. I'm willing to get behind anything, any good ideas. I mean, look, even back in the Howard era, where I've spoken to John Howard about this. He is also a huge fan of income splitting, and I asked him once, why did you go down the family tax benefit route? And the idea ultimately was that it would be better to provide the assistance on a more regular basis through effectively the Centrelink arrangements, which is what's still done today. And they did lift the assistance to families by a significant amount through that mechanism. And while that's not my preferred mechanism, whether it was causal or not, that extra spending did lift our birth rate. At the same time, we got up to 2 by the end of the Howard era. So I think this stuff does work. My personal opinion, when you look around the world, it does work, and probably doesn't matter too much how it's delivered. Just that if that support is there. And there's also a strong sort of message from the government, like Peter Costello said, to have one for yourself, one for your wife, and one for the country. It has an impact, and we need some leadership, we need some direction on this crucial issue.
Yeah, Matt, just before we get on to One Nation, which I know we'll come to, I just want to go back to your Hyper Australia. You mentioned dams. I take it you mean irrigation dams. What are your plans regarding new irrigation dams, and how will you get around this concern about the economics of these dams? We've seen, say Rookwood Weir. I mean, looking at the benefit cost analysis that was done for building Queensland, it looked pretty marginal. And now we've got, even though I know Paradise Dam is a great resource for the Bundaberg region, we now see the expected cost is $4 billion, which is just an extraordinary cost. So how are you going to manage those concerns?
Well, look, when we were in government last, we put funds towards dam building because I think opening up new farming areas and creating new areas of economic opportunity are important national interests. So it will come at a cost, and some of these projects may not meet a strict benefit cost estimate benchmark from a purely economic question, but goes to that family question as we were talking about before. I think it's very important that we move out from just Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And to do that, we need to create jobs opportunities, we need to create wealth outside our regions. And looking back then on dams that we've built in the past, apart from Paradise, which has certainly had its issues, most of what we've built has been amazingly successful. I mean, I've just spent the last couple of months in Farrer. Farrer by-election. It's at the heart of the Murray-Darling system, where we built the Burrinjuck Dam, the Hume Weir, Blowering Dam, like all of these dams for that area that have opened up, like Griffith. If you go to Griffith, it's a town of 25,000 people. Yep. Amazing place. Amazing innovation comes out of there. The heart of our food production, our country. Amazingly diverse, multicultural place. It's just fantastic community. That wouldn't be there without those dams. It was just desert before. So these things do work. I know I'm not saying we just go ahead and just build dams without considering the cost. Obviously, we need to weigh it up. And you're right, the Rookwood Weir was a bit marginal, but I tell you what, it's been very, very successful already. 800,000 macadamia trees are being grown right now, just west of where I am, thanks to the Rookwood Weir. And the water was taken up more. I'd say, compared to those estimates in the study, the demand for water, the investments unleashed have been greater than what was expected. So that's another sign that these things can work. But we have put money into that. The federal government put money into that. I think we should look at Urana and Hell's Gate as well. There's so much water up here in Northern Australia, and we could do what we've done in the Murray-Darling elsewhere. I'll say one more thing. We have to, with the things like the Murray-Darling, we need to reinvest in those. A lot of those dams I mentioned are coming up to 100 years. Hume Weir was built Burrinjuck was built almost 100 years ago now, and as it reaches those end of life, we need to upgrade and invest in those. Otherwise, we lose our food bowl. And in these challenging times, I think growing food too and having food security is important as well.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, now, so we are having a good stream of questions coming in, but I'm going to be typically greedy and get another one of my own questions in first before we go to the people.
I'm going to ask you about the topic of the episode, John.
You're probably just going to have to get sick of us and run off, Matt. Otherwise, we'll keep you until midnight. But no, it's, no, let us know. You type it in a personal chat if you like, to let us know the deadline, and we'll pretend that was our deadline all along to make it look good. But tying in both with your More Australia pitch, which I like that pitch, and the fertility drive, which I think has been both hugely important economically and culturally, and a missing niche in politics for the first politician to take advantage of it properly. But tying into both of those, more cities, more towns outside of bloody everyone needing to live in the same bloody 5 CBDs across this country. Have you got any thoughts on how that can be achieved? I know you'd like that. I don't know if it needs to be rocky, but you'd like to see more of these small towns become medium towns in Australia to actually have a population that's spread around a bit better. But have you got any thoughts on how to actually achieve something like that, other than, of course, the greatest idea there is, which is to have more states, so we have more state capitals? But in addition to that idea, are there anything else that we can do?
I have said that before. I'll come back to the more states, but I'll start. I mean, look, the fundamental problem, John, is in these areas that we want to develop, we need lower regulations and lower taxes. Right? The problem we've got is that the state, the regulatory state that's imposed on places like Rockhampton, but even more remote places like Weipa and areas, Kimberleys that have enormous opportunity in our country, they have to live under the jackboot of the same regulations, the same high taxes as capital cities are happy to do now, but they can't get relief from that for a different stage of development. When my state, Queensland, and in living memory, when I was a kid, Joe.
I think we've lost Gene. Are you getting this, or have I gone?
No, I can't. I've lost Matt too. He was going.
Right.
He was talking about Joe. Right, that would have been.
Come back. I think that might be the internet.
We just heard Joe, and then you just went.
Yeah,
blank.
As soon as you said Joe, ASIO pulled the plug and has cut the feed.
That's right. But I think I'm back. Internet seems fine. I was saying when I was a kid, Joe was lowering taxes, lowering red tape, and he sort of because he had to, because Brisbane had to grow. We had to grow to survive as a state, and we attracted lots of investment on the back of that. We also played that role in a competitive federalism environment where other states had to get rid of their taxes just to stop the outflow of investment to Queensland. We don't really have anywhere doing that right now, right? And it's really sad because there's so many parts of our country that could develop, but once you get to be a big city and you've got congestion and public transport and all these issues, people generally demand a bigger state, a bigger government to tackle those issues. Okay, fair enough. That's their preference. But it leaves us poor suckers that don't have those same issues facing much higher regulation, much higher red tape. So, we've got these things like the EPBC Act, and as I've joked many times before, if only the Aboriginals realised that all they needed to do to stop the British was to have an EPBC Act, Sydney would never have been built, right? It never would have been built. You walk down Tank Street in Sydney, you are walking over the Tank Stream. There used to be a stream, a watercourse under that road that fed the Sydney Basin, completely destroyed by building the city of Sydney. And now you have protesters walking on that street demanding that there be no development elsewhere where Aboriginals do still live, where lots of them still live, often in third world poverty conditions, and that there be no mines, no farms, no development done in any of those areas. It's hypocrisy on stilts, but it also just limits our country and it keeps us stuck, as you say, in those 5 mainland capitals, not being able to get out of them.
Yeah, I guess another little one that's worth noting, I imagine you'd agree with this anyway, when people are looking at infrastructure, there is a disproportionate amount given to public transport in the cities and relatively less given to roads, because a lot of people outside the 5 big cities aren't catching a bus or train everywhere. They need their roads. They don't appreciate the modern war on cars, the modern war on petrol, and being able to drive in an hour into the local shops or into work or wherever you need to go. So roads versus public transport. Just quickly on new states.
Can I just say one thing about that? One thing a lot of people have missed in recent years, I don't know if you guys have missed it, but the Commonwealth Grants Commission, I think probably 7 or 8 years ago, changed their formula such that those subsidies, massive subsidies given to public transport, they now get factored in. So if you've got a large public transport network that you massively subsidise, you get more of the GST to help pay for that. And so while it's intrastate, not interstate, effectively states are incentivised now to, like Queensland, have 50-cent fares, like Victoria at the moment, give free public transport, and they get subsidised by the rest of the country by us poor saps creating the wealth. And certainly a lot of the coal wealth, the gas wealth, the iron ore wealth gets redistributed through that process to subsidise the preferences of capital city commuters in our inner cities.
Well, that's also just a problem with it. The GST carve-up subsidises inefficient governments and punishes efficient governments for the crime of their productivity and efficiency. But that's a different rant, maybe for a different day. Can I just get you quickly to comment if there's anything you'd like to say or that's interesting to say about the idea of new states? I'm a big proponent that we should have a lot more than 6. I'm happy to start with just 8 or 9, but I think we can go further. Where are you on that, Matt?
Look, I've expressed support for it before. I'm leader of the Nationals Party now, so we'll have that discussion. I'm encouraging my colleagues to be bold, and if you want to get onto One Nation, I'm happy to expand on this. But we've got to be bold. We've got to increase the contrast between ourselves and our political opponents. And so I'd love this idea to get an airing, but I'll have to respect the views of my colleagues as leader, and we'll see where that discussion goes. But look, putting on my hat from mine, or taking off my leader hat and going back to me a backbencher, I, like you, was a very passionate supporter of this. I'd make the point that there are 3 different parts of our constitution which allow for the creation of new states. Our founding fathers, and they were all blokes in the 1890s, they would be shocked. They would be absolutely shocked to a man that we have not created new states. If you read the constitutional debates, it was just an expectation that this would happen because it happened in the US and we were a growing and developing country, so we would have to do the same as the US did over time. But we haven't. We just didn't. I suppose a couple of wars held things up. There was a vote for a new state of New England in 1967. It lost thanks to some trickery from the Labor Party, who put Newcastle into New England, and the Labor voting area of Newcastle voted against it, even though the rest of New England wanted it, and that saw it go down, and it's never really recovered. Nearly 60 years on now. Next year will be 60 years since that vote, so maybe it's a good time to relaunch the new state movement. I tell you what, there's a lot of passion for it, a lot of receptiveness to it up here in North Queensland. We have 1 million people now north of the Tropic of Capricorn. We actually have a higher per head, per person economic output than southern Queensland. It does beg the question, why would we have such a large state with such massive population bases, economic bases? Southern Queensland's great too. They've got a huge economic base. But why not allow some differences to occur, some competition to occur, as I said, in taxes and regulations, and also, of course, let New South Wales have a crack for a change. I mean, they can't beat us as a combined state, so maybe if we have a tripart state of origin series, they might get a go.
Just on the regional government, or perhaps new states, I think definitely there is that disconnect. I mean, I think certainly in the capital cities we possibly lose touch with the regions, and this may be a bit esoteric, but one issue is the cost of living, for example. So I'm hearing from my colleagues in regional Australia or regional Queensland just how much worse the cost of living concerns are up north, say around Cairns, Townsville. And so we're going to be having a cost of living summit for Economic Society up there in a couple of months or so. But they would like a regional CPI. Why don't we have a regional CPI rather than just focusing on capital city prices? Like, that's one thing we could have. Try and establish what those price differences are. We just don't have the data to be able to tell that story. So that's one aspect of it.
That's a great point. I know the various state governments have tried, I think, at times to do a quasi sort of shopping basket sort of thing, and they do always show that in certain, particularly those more remote regional communities, it's stark, and with when inflation occurs like it has, those differences are going to widen. Wages are set centrally across our whole country, of course, and therefore don't take account necessarily of those differences as well. It's been very hard for lots of these areas, and obviously things like fuel and transport, that just makes things worse.
Yep. All right, John, should we get into the quickly?
Well, before we get
Cool.
to the questions, because they are coming in, but I don't know if that's what you're going to say, Gene, preemptively.
Well, we're going to ask you
cutting
about
you
One
off.
Nation, the
Yes.
existential threat to the National Party, which is the topic
Well,
of...
I might link it back. I might link it a bit to what we just discussed. I mean, this frustration of being ruled by inner city elites is a big part of what we're seeing in politics, and people just getting frustrated with the establishment and trying out shopping for other options. So, we've got to deal with that issue that in my own political movement, not so much the Nationals, but probably through the coalition, the Liberal and Nationals, we've seen time and time again decisions made that were seemingly about trying to protect seats in inner city areas or have to deal with the particular prejudices and proclivities of the ABC and our inner cities, and the rest of the country feeling like they're left behind. And it's not just the regions. I think you're seeing it in the outer suburbs as well, that their views, their interests are just being ignored. And so I'm not surprised that we're at this moment. I had been warning about it for quite some time. I remember getting up in the party room last year. We were at there was a lot of people saying, One Nation can't work here, or a Reform Party, a Trump can't work here because we have the compulsory preferential system. And I just got up and called bullshit on it because I said, guys, the preferential system helps minor parties, or at least the preferential system does. Compulsory voting is a little more complex, but the preferential system helps minor parties. That's how the Teals have got elected. None of them would have won, or one, I think, out of 10 would have won on the first past the post system. And so we were very vulnerable to this, but it was ignored for too long. All I can say is I'm committed as leader to not ignore those voices, to make decisions based on what we believe and what we think is right for the country, and be unashamed about arguing for it. That's at the core of the problem. The core of the problem is that people have told you lies time and time again, and they know they're lies, but they tell the lies because they think that's what they're told by the advisors. That's what they have to say to keep their jobs, to get re-elected. It hasn't worked for us. We didn't get elected. We lost, and last year lost very, very badly. And so why don't we just tell the truth for a change, have the courage of our convictions, and that's what I'll bring to the fight. But yeah, I realise it is the fight of our lives.
I don't know if there's an easy way to answer this. It seems to me there is some amount of convergence on the right. I don't know if we call it the new right, the anti-elite right, the anti-Canberra right. There's some amount of convergence on skepticism of net zero, or throwing net zero in the bin entirely, sort of just putting all the woke stuff behind us, getting taxes down on the families, as we've been talking about already, worrying about fertility. A lot of these things, there's a convergence of thought between a bunch of different people, to the point where, in a policy sense, is there scope for a serious contrast with One Nation? Or is it basically now Matt Canavan's Nationals and Pauline Hans's One Nation competing to say who's the more competent provider of roughly a similar basket of policies?
Look, there are differences, but I do think there's some truth in that. I hope that the question ultimately becomes, in a couple of years' time, that who's going to run the show, who's best to run the country. I think that the first step we've got to do, and we can't underestimate how hard this is to show that we can beat and can defeat. When I say we, yes, the broader Conservative movement will defeat the Labor government at the election, or at least have a good chance of doing that. So we put people in the view that when they go into the ballot box, their vote is important. Their vote could change the government and therefore change the country. I think we're well on track to doing that, and the government's helped us no end with a budget full of lies, broken promises, and ultimately have one that has now got massive backflips in it too. So we can see the government on the skids. There's a big task there, though. There's lots of seats to win. And then it's going to be a matter of, as I say, showing that, yes, look, we've got the team to do it. We've got the experience. I think Angus Taylor would be a great Prime Minister right now. He's extremely intelligent, very level-headed, got a good economic brain. We need people like him. Got great values, great person, a great guy, like one of the best guys I've met in politics. Really, really good person, Angus. So we need someone like that as leader, as Prime Minister. Now then, look, there are differences, though, too. There are differences. I mean, you might get onto the speech yesterday from Pauline. I caught up with Pauline today in Townsville. I thought she gave a good speech. She certainly smashed all that the woke left media there. They could not lay a glove on her. But I felt, look, there wasn't a lot in the speech, nothing in the speech, in fact, about regional Australia, about growing our country and development. I think that's some difference. We, do have this in our DNA in the Nationals Party, and lots of Liberals too. Want to see our country developed and have plans to do that. I can understand where she's going on the monocultural point. I'm not quite sure I'd use that particular word. We get into a bit of semantic issues here, but I do think that there's nothing wrong with us having people from all around the world. It's been part of how we built our country, but we do need a set of what I'd say common values. We need a common culture. That's how I describe it. We need a common culture in this country, which we all share, that brings us together and unite. And then, of course, we do have, if you want to call it culture or ethnicities, I don't care, but people do have their own practices, different religions, different ways of celebrating life and marrying each other and burying each other and all those wonderful things. That's great. I've got no problem with that. And, I do worry sometimes with some of the things Pauline has said that it will be too divisive for our country. I think we've got to bring ourselves together at this time. And we do have a great country with lots of great people from all over the world. We just need to make sure we defend those common values again, which this government I don't think is doing.
Do you think Labor can be defeated at the next federal election?
Absolutely. I've thought that for a long time. In fact, I ran for leader just after the election, and I thought they were eminently defeatable. It probably didn't help my pitch to my colleagues by saying, look, if you vote for me, we're getting rid of net zero now. It's happening now. And while I think my colleagues were on that train, they just weren't sure how that was going to happen right now. But, I laid out a plan. Like, we can win this. I suppose I regret a little that, maybe this surge in One Nation could have happened for the Nationals Party if we'd captured that territory. It's happened so quickly, guys. Like, let's not forget that either. Less than a year ago, right? One Nation got 6.5% at the election. They flatlined for a bit after the election and surged later last year. So things can turn around quickly. So I think this government has been more vulnerable than it looks like because its primary vote is low, which has been low. It's not delivering for the Australian people. I think the decision last year was ultimately down to the fact that, look, people weren't exactly enthused with the Albanese Labor government, but because we went to the election without offering much difference, we didn't really show people how we were going to change things. People thought, well, how are things going to get better if we've effectively got an opposition that's going to be about the same, but just be not anti-Albanese? And then eventually they decide, well, better the devil we know. As I say, this next election, as you've hinted to as well, we're going to have a high contrast between a emboldened, energised conservative right, with lots of competition. Competition's a great thing, as I don't think I need to convince you guys. That is injecting a level of enthusiasm to the conservative side of politics, one way or another. So I do welcome what's going on. I think it's a good thing. And I don't mind criticising my opponents. Some of your listeners will be worried about me criticising One Nation. Guys, that's competition. It helps. It helps vigor, right? Put vigor in us. And so we'll be really, really, I think, match fit. And then I just say, the moment's just out of ideas, on the back foot, looking tired. The Green movement is just decimated at the moment. I mean, these guys have got no answers. Their policy prescriptions have been failures everywhere they've been tried. They're going out the back door. So we got a unique opportunity here, and we've got to win, in my view. Like this, if we don't win the next election, we're going to go into quite a hole, and I can't take anything for granted for what we've got in this country.
Yeah. Matt, can I ask a question about the tactics? I think what One Nation seems to be doing well is that social media game, and I mean Ashby seems to have really done wonders for them in terms of their outreach, and given all the blunders that the government has made with its tax policy, and I think Andrew Bolt was asking the other night, well, where's Angus Taylor? But it's Hanson and in her party that you're seeing. Are you going to be what are you doing for your social media?
Look, I think that's look, I'll come back to that. Yes, short answer yes, but I reckon that's unfair, right? I mean, okay. Angus and myself, but particularly Angus has been out there every day since the budget, smashing them. on this, getting around the country, talking to small businesses. Look, I respect what One Nation are doing, but they haven't exactly been doing that. If you go and look at the record, they haven't been getting around as much as Tim Wilson and Angus have both been doing. Because keep in mind, this is where the rubber hits the road here. Where let's just take a bit of a chill pill and think about how this works in practice. We've got to win Labor seats, right? We've got to go into the areas where people are not going to be listening to your podcast. They're not that engaged in the day-to-day politics, but it's a lot of hard yakka, going to business roundtables, going to talk to individual business, wearing out your shoe leather. That's what works. So we get a bit distracted with the social media stuff, but politics is a grassroots, human-to-human interaction, and it will always be that. Social media can help and it amplifies things, but at the heart, it's still that. And my one criticism I have of Pauline Hanson, One Nation lately, is she has spent most of her time running around in seats, largely Nationals Party seats, in the bush, in very comfortable places that she's very welcome, has very receptive audiences. That ain't going to change the government. Those seats are already held by the Conservative side of politics. We need to go to the areas that Labor holds and win those. Right. And so we've got to do a bit more work there. On social media, yes, absolutely. Look, I've built up a fair following over my time and do okay on it. And we've got to do more on that, of course. But I do think ultimately, look, we're not exactly going to win this through cartoons, guys. I mean, the One Nation cartoon's been great, but it was there before the last federal election, and they got 6.5% of the vote. The cartoon actually hasn't run during this period where they surged, right? It wasn't running. And so it's not that alone. It can't be that alone. We ultimately need to have very detailed, strong, convincing, coherent plans, real plans for the country. I think people are moving into a mindset where they'll be receptive to such detail because they're so worried with how things are going. Things have gone backwards so fast. They're starting to listen. They're listening. And so let's not be distracted with bright, shiny things. The main thing I'm doing with the Nationals Party right now is not social media. It's, as I hinted at earlier, getting bold ideas from my colleagues, from our team, that are going to make the difference at the polls. And then we turn to the marketing. So, because the biggest issue I've had with politics the last decade is that we've always had it the wrong way around. We do the marketing first, like what will sell best, and that decides what our product is. I've got this old-fashioned view. I know I've got social media, all these things, but I still think it works. You've got to have a good product. You've got a good product that sells. That's what will eventually get traction. Yes, through social media, but without that, we've got no hope on my side of politics. We've got to have the product development, and that's what I'm focusing on right now.
Just a slight echo of that. I think there's also a case. I don't know who I'm trying to convince when I say this, but one of the purposes of good policy is to get re-elected. If you get elected on nice-sounding policy that doesn't work, in 3 years' time, you've got a poorer country, a more fragmented country, an unhappier populace, and then you've got to somehow come up with more dog and pony shows to trick people to get out of that. So sometimes the good policies are something you have to get done in the background so that you can say 3 years later, look at what we've done. Look at how you're richer. Look at how you're benefiting now. I think a lot of Howard's success was him in the latter years, basically free riding off the excellent work he did in the first couple of years. And the first couple of years of work he did wasn't particularly popular, but it created the base for him to be able to keep getting re-elected.
Yeah. And it's also what's sad about the former Liberal national government. I was part of it, but the original sin was getting rid of Tony Abbott. Tony did, he doesn't get enough credit for the fact that he took a very brave budget, first budget with cutting spending, reforming education funding, the Medicare system issues. He took a lot of very tough policies there. It was very brave, and didn't work out. And a few Liberals got the jumps, and they got rid of him, and ended up with Malcolm Turnbull. So the rest is history. But yes, look, you're right. Look, we got to be sensible about it. I'm not be crazy brave, but we do need first and foremost to decide what we think is best and most important for our country, and then find out ways of how to best argue for that, or best present that, best modify that to make sure it's just not too extreme, but something sensible. that people can support, that can win this election, but really show that we're going to make a difference. We're going to improve people's lives, going to lift your wages, going to make it easy, going to make it easy if you have kids, going to use our resources again and defend our country. These are achievable goals given the advantages we have as a nation. So we should be able to have a set of policies that can do that.
And of course, if you're not in it to improve the set of policies, why are you involved in politics? If you're not there for good policies, then you're only there for the power trip. So I worry about such people. And I know, Matt, you're there for the good policies. It's one of the reasons why, even when I disagree with you, I enjoy the conversations. Jean, feel free to chuck in any other question you have, Jean. Otherwise, maybe I'll start rounding up some of these from the peanut gallery.
Oh, let's go to the viewer questions.
All right. Well, here's an interesting one in how you choose to interpret the word nationalist. What qualities do you believe goes in the making of a good nationalist party?
Well, look, we've got to just love our country and do things for Australia first. I mean, one thing we perhaps haven't touched on is this global cosmopolitan trend, which has tended to elevate global issues above and beyond those of our own country. And yes, some people seem to feel more comfortable over in Europe and getting pats on the back there than they are in a country pub and worrying about the concerns and issues of people here in their own country. Look, I'm a big believer in the principle that you look after, you spend the most time looking after those closest to you, and there's concentric circles out from there. What's the Latin word? Ordo amoris, I think. I might have got that round the wrong way, but the order of love, basically, is what it means. And a good society is built on you. Well, first thing you should do is look after yourself, and as Jordan Peterson says, clean your bedroom in the morning and make sure you're healthy and that sort of stuff. Then you got your family to look after; they're important to you. You got your own society and community that you live in and work in, and your state, your nation, and then yes, the globe's important too. We do what we can there. But the fundamental difference, I think, between a nationalist party, as this question is raised, and a globalist party is that the globalist party reverse that order, that they care more about the cliched starving children in Africa than they do than the people living in poverty in their own street. And that, there might be a sort of sense of moral attraction to the globalist view, but ultimately it leads to poor decisions, no good outcomes for anybody because we don't know how to do things and can't really affect what happens on the other side of the world. We can and do have the power to make things better in our own world where we are. And that's what we should concentrate on. So we've lost our way there with these international treaties, with pursuing these global goals and aims above and beyond our own welfare. And that's led to this outbreak of massive frustration. People can see their leaders are not in it for them. Well, I'm fighting against that. And hopefully I'll be a good leader of the nationalist party. We're not a nationalist party, but I get where you're coming from. Believe in that.
Yeah. And it's the stagnant living standards that are feeding into this too, isn't it, Matt? It's that decade of stagnation in productivity that's a part of it too. So
they're going backwards. They're not stagnant. They're going backwards. They're going backwards. Their real wages are back to 15 years. But that's based on the CPI. I thought Adam Crichton did an excellent job recently in The Australian, using some of the older metrics that costed housing in a different way in the old CPI series. On his numbers, we've potentially gone backwards when you maybe factor in housing costs properly. We've gone backwards to the 1990s.
Right.
Living standards today are equivalent to those in the late 1990s. And so absolutely, that's at the heart of this frustration and the volatility in politics.
And we're all working longer to get it as well. A question from Taylor, regular listener. Would your party decentralize federal government jobs to the regional hubs, not just technical hands-on roles, but business systems, analyst, policy officers, etc.? I love the question. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. We did do a little bit of that in government. We moved the APVMA to Armidale. And it was Barnaby Joyce. He did his best work as a member and leader of the Nationalist Party. I did set up the NAIF up in Cairns. I mean, it was a Northern Australian infrastructure facility. So there were some people, though, who wanted to put it in Canberra or in Brisbane, but no, it got put in Cairns. I think we should do more about that. I did just speak this morning at a defence summit in Townsville about the importance of putting defence industry jobs where our defence forces actually are. I mean, 90% of our Army personnel are in Northern Australia, and that's a good thing, but the vast majority of our equipment, our maintenance, our industry that support those pieces of kit are not near there. And that does, I think, lead to some capability issues. Phil Thompson, our Shadow Defence Industry spokesperson, he's former military, great guy. He makes this point to me regularly. So it makes sense to do that. Just one example of that, we've got our armoured personnel carriers stuck in Nogra. They sit there 10 kilometres from the CBD of Brisbane. They can't be used. Obviously, you can't take them out down Queen Street and fire them off. Obviously, they have to come up to a place called Shoalwater Bay, which is near where I am, very close to where I am right now. So they come up and down the Bruce. I asked about this to the Senator a few years ago. It costs us $35 million a year to transport these things up and down the Bruce Highway. They do damage to the roads. Why not just leave them up here? We've got heaps of space up here. They could probably be parked in Rocky, and you could have the mechanics and everybody here. Plenty of room here, great lifestyle here, and it would be a 30-minute run out to their training grounds. But anyway, it's hard. It's hard to get people to move. It's very hard to get defence personnel to move. Let's just say that.
Well, defence personnel have to move a lot. You probably don't know this, but I'm now stationed at Nogra, joining the Army Reserve. So don't take away my choice.
Right. You'll be up there. You'll be coming up to Rock Vegas before you know it, John.
But the other benefit is if you take all the bureaucrat jobs from all the other line agencies and just move them en masse to somewhere they don't want to go, well, then they all quit, and then you've got
one thing I didn't mention is look, we do have the work from home thing too now, right? And I've embraced that. I was very against that before COVID, and enforced that as a minister. It made people move to the regions. So we're happy about that. But look, we got it now. I suppose we should embrace it, particularly given this decentralisation thing I mentioned. So, there could be ways of incentivising the public service to be out of Canberra and live in these regions, help take pressure off our major cities, and bring a different perspective. There's no doubt in my mind the other advantage here is when you live in a regional area, it does change your whole mindset. I've seen that many times.
Also, if there's a guaranteed set of sort of high-paid people in these towns, it creates an incentive to build the coffee shops and everything else that goes with it, and allows the regional towns to grow. And of course, you can't say this, and you probably have to shake your head very sternly when I say it, but wouldn't it be a shame if a lot of those bureaucrats quit their job and we had a smaller public service because of it? So that I see as a benefit.
There's no doubt, as we said the last election, there's got to be a downsizing here. I don't think we should do that straight away, but we proposed at the last election that through natural attrition, we should look at bringing the numbers back down. I mean, at least a year ago, I haven't done this since, but at the election last year, it's probably worse now, but 1 in 6 public servants in Canberra were employed by Anthony Albanese. 1 in 6. The growth in our public service under this government is just it's off the charts, and it's not sustainable. Not good for our productivity, not good for our country, and it's costing us an absolute fortune. So there has to be some action on that front.
Well, can I put an argument to you along these lines and have you can respond or let it go to the keeper if you like? But part of the issue with the bureaucracy of this size is you've got a minister that has got very good at getting elected, very good at playing internal party games. And I'm not knocking that. You need people to be able to play games to get ahead, good at managing people. Hasn't necessarily spent the last 3 decades of their life just studying their portfolio in depth. They might not have known what portfolio they were just about to be given last week. And then they've got a staff of, a dozen people or so. And then they go up against a department of thousands of people wearing very fancy suits with very fancy briefcases, who've been doing their job for decades, who have a thick binder full of ideas, and all of their mates in academia and the media to back them up with the idea that they're pitching to this minister. It seems to me that the balance of power between the politicians and the bureaucrats is totally warped, and that the higher number of bureaucrats we have now isn't just a fiscal cost, a budgetary cost to this country. It's got a democratic cost in that the bureaucrats in some instances are able to lead their ministers around by the nose. Unless you've got a very headstrong, intelligent minister that already knew what they wanted to do before they got there, such as yourself, Matt, not everyone is up to that standard. And I fear a lot of them end up getting led around by the nose by their bureaucracy, and they just don't have the horsepower in their staffers.
It's an excellent point, John. I don't have an immediate answer to it because these bureaucracies are going to stay somewhat large and much larger than your own office, that's for sure. And under a Westminster system, the way we operate, have to be a member of parliament to be a minister, so you don't necessarily get people of experts in the field like you might in the US cabinet. And so you've got a bit of this. So I suppose the one thing we should have going for us and should invest in relative to the Labor Party is we tend to be better connected to business types and other people outside that world, so that can challenge those ideas. The Howard government did bring in secretaries too from outside, so that's another way of dealing with this, that maybe bring in, we can appoint secretaries of departments and the heads of departments, or dep secretaries that have that outside experience, bring in some new ideas, hybrid vigor to the organisations. Perhaps not enough that happened in the last government. Look, I was very lucky as a minister. I was very lucky. I had a good department, the Department of Industry. They love their topic and loved mining and resources. Geologists are some of the best people in the world. I love them. I mean, if it takes a special type to devote themselves to rocks in their whole lives, but I was lucky enough to work with lots of them. And I had clear priorities. So, yeah, the most important thing as a minister is the day one, you sit down with your secretary. I always had a page and said, this is what I want. This is what I want you and your department to do. It's all on a page. These are my aims and objectives, and your job is to implement them.
Matt, what do you think about what's happened with Treasury? Are you concerned about the capability of Treasury and the leadership of Treasury now?
You'd know more than me, Gene. I've never worked for Treasury, but look, I am, Gene. They've grown massively too, and I just worry about that. I would prefer probably a leaner and meaner Treasury. It's a central department, so I'm not sure why it has to have so many people in it. Look, I think overall the public service, they've gone down this woke DEI hiring spree, and they seem to have put meritocracy to one side. And I've spoken to a lot of people who feel like their careers have been restricted and put a ceiling over because they're not the right gender or not the right sexuality or whatever it might be. And that's got to have an impact. We've got to bring meritocracy back to our country and certainly back to our public service. So I'm very much worried about that. Look, we can certainly see in some of these key departments that the outcomes of the decisions they made have been horrible, and there doesn't seem to be any accountability. Yep. I mean, the inflation has broken out. That was a total miss. Treasury was advising Josh Frydenberg to increase spending in mid 2021 because they reckon they could get unemployment long term with a 4 in front of it, and they reckon the Nauru had dropped. And I'm not just saying this. I'm not being a Monday quarterback. I raised this and said this at the time with Stephen Kennedy and saying, mate, there's already signs of inflation breaking out. Other economists are saying this is going to be a massive post-COVID breakout of inflation, and they just rejected it all. Well, where's the accountability? Stephen, and a lovely guy, and I really get along with Stephen, but he's now been promoted to Secretary of PMC. Poor Glenn Stevens, he was made to walk the plank, and yep, he made a mistake, probably should have. What about all the energy bureaucrats? All these people who claim that power prices would come down with renewable investment, all this stuff. There's zero accountability in that space. Zero. And I suppose that is also behind this frustration of where, like, people in their own lives, if they make a mistake, they can lose their job, they can certainly lose their business. But in the public service, you can preside over the worst economic performance in our country's history. You can destroy our nation's energy competitiveness, see industry leave our shores in droves, and you get promoted. I mean, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
That's democracy. That's the problem. But
John,
I won't start there. I won't start that again.
Some of those common values, John. If you don't support democracy, you're getting deported, remember, under our plan. Oh, yeah. So careful what you say, mate.
All right. I'm going to slightly edit this one because I think it'll be too easy for you to respond because, of course, there are Liberals that have an interest in regional causes. But Taylor here's asking about the difficulty of a Nat working with the Liberals. Can I put it? There are some Liberals who are concerned the loss of the seats to the Teals indicates that you need to address the concerns of those marginal Teal or Liberal voters, which means really going in a Tealish direction is the implication there. And I can see the internal logic. I think that's wrong, but I can see the internal logic, and clearly such people exist, often running state party headquarters, as far as I can tell. That obviously is in contrast to what the sort of new right national party under someone such as yourself would be trending towards. Have you got a way to try and marry those two ideas together and keep harmony?
Look, I mean, I've worked with many great Liberal Party people over the years. There's not a huge... Look, there's always difference of opinion, right? But you've got to work with people with different views. So, it's... it's just a fact of life. And as I said earlier, it's a good thing too. Like, I don't want a party or a cabinet full of all people who agree with me and just nod their heads. That will lead to very bad decision making. So it's good to be challenged by people with different perspectives, including, my inner city colleagues who sometimes have different views. No problem with that. As you highlighted, I want to stress there's plenty of Liberals that come from regional areas, great people like Rick Wilson, Phil Thompson, I mentioned was with before, fantastic guys. They could easily be in the Nationals Party too. But yes, then we've had this other issue with the rise of the Teals, and look, I can totally understand the problem there, and I don't want to throw my colleagues to the wolves. But what I've been frustrated with is that it was just insane for us to adjust our entire policy platform at times based on issues that were popping up in a very much a minority of seats, and ones that were asking us to fundamentally adjust our core principles and values for just a few seats. It's just ridiculous. I mean, at its heart, if I just use that, the main example, and lots of the others were related to the net zero issue. I mean, at its heart, net zero, the whole net zero agenda is socialism. I mean, they want to generate a particular economic outcome at a particular time, which requires massive central planning to deliver that. They have to tell us, what energy we can use, how we make things, even what food we can eat, all have to be directed by the state. And that is socialism. And guys, we are just not socialists. It's not why any of us joined the party, including my inner city Liberal colleagues. So there's lots that we have in common. Right? We do believe in a small government, generally speaking. We don't believe in the state dictating every individual people's lives. We will at times disagree with, okay, exactly what should the state do when it comes to, say, industry protection or national development. There's debates to be had there. But there are some core principles across conservative political parties that do unite us. And look, the Liberal and National parties have been very, very successful in this country, certainly the most successful political partnership at a federal level. And I've got, particularly Angus and I, got a great working relationship, got a huge hope that will continue and will come back from these challenging times and take our country back too.
I'm going to take the opportunity to segue there based on one thing you said, and it's just because if we have this long chat and I don't raise the one obvious issue where we would see the world slightly differently, it would be seen as cowardice on my part. Can I get some clarity from you, Matt, what you envisage and a trade and industry policy looking like? I got some sense from your speech at the National Press Club where I agreed with nearly everything you said except for the gratuitous attacks on Milton Friedman, which seems to just be added just to poke me in the eye. But while I'm nodding my head at everything else you said.
I love Milton. I've probably got Freedom Choose is probably up there somewhere. I don't know.
No, I didn't mind that. I actually grinned
that book
to
had
myself.
A huge impact on my life. But as did your tutoring, John. I probably read it about the same time you tutored me, I think. But
I smiled when you said it because it probably made sense politically. But I got to say, when you were talking about trade, a lot of what you were saying there, maybe I misunderstood it, but you were pointing out our current trade policies where we try to go down the path of accusing someone of dumping, and then we put on a 200% equivalent tariff on them, and then sometimes that works and sometimes doesn't work. And if you replace that with a low consistent tariff, it might actually give more certainty. That actually sounds just like good trade policy as well that could be embraced by a relatively free trader. But it wasn't clear to me whether you were talking about a low consistent tariff or you were talking about that as a foot in the door and then steadily ramp it up to 100% itself. So feel free to disagree with me.
I wasn't talking about the latter. But look, I do think the reason I used the line about Milton Friedman is I think the economic times have got very different from they were 40 or 50 years ago, and particularly the rise of China and the threat that faces for us. I just think we're being very gullible and naive to give up the commanding heights of an industrial economy to a country that could very well be an adversary. Now, I wish that, I hope and wish that doesn't happen. Right? The greatest fear I have is the outbreak of another world war. It'd be the worst thing for the world. It'd be terrible for our countrymen. I don't want to see that for my kids. So I very much want to avoid it. It's why I gave support to Donald Trump for the last election. I'm a bit sort of off that train at the moment with what's happened in the Middle East, but hopefully peace is broken out and we get back to some sensibility. But we've got to be prepared for the worst, not just hope for the best. And and that means maintaining a level of industry and support for what will need to be then a military response. And our trade policies at the moment have effectively given up lots of that industrial capacity to China, because China's certainly not respecting the World Trade Organization rules that they promised to do when they came into the WTO. And there should and needs to be a response. Now, then in the detail of that, I did say, well, you are responding. It's not like the government's doing nothing. They're throwing out massive blank checks now. We've given $5 billion away in the past year to the biggest companies in the world, Glencore, Rio Tinto, all getting massive corporate welfare from you and I to keep copper smelters going, aluminium smelters going. And there's much more to come on that front. And then we do have this convoluted anti-dumping system, which they've just imposed some more steel tariffs on fabricated steel. But yes, it's so complex, it's so ad hoc and band-aid-like, it doesn't really provide a strong and permanent base for a thriving industrial sector. And so I just feel we have to recognise the changed economic realities. And Milton Friedman did great work in dismantling what was a bloated post-Keynesian state. But right now, we've got a naive free market state, and I should use that in inverted commas, because everything gets talked about as being a free market now. Carbon trading is a free market. The ETS is a free market. It's absolutely the NDIS was an example of this free market ideology. And I'm not trying to attack you, John. I know you love free markets, but they're not free. They're not markets, and they've ended up creating massive amounts of waste. And in the case of the industry and trade policies, come at a huge economic industrial strength cost to ourselves by shipping our industry to China.
Yeah, just
now, the left has done a remarkable thing in capturing.
Now we're going to go for another hour. Now I've said that, mate. I'm gonna pull you up about 10. I'll give you that, right? Okay. Like, come on, I got to get.
No, fair enough. I wasn't going to disagree with you. I was going to basically, the left has done a remarkable job with language, where we've got taxes at the highest rate in ever.
She didn't ask you how long this was for. I assumed it was like half an
hour. I wouldn't have told you, otherwise you might not have come. But no,
we could go for another hour now on industry and trade policy.
Taxes at the highest level ever, government spending at the highest level ever, and the common narrative coming out of academia and the media is that the government has been slashed. And every time taxes only go up a little bit instead of a lot, they call that a tax cut. And so that capturing of language has significantly warped the way people see things. So to some degree, I can understand the use of that, the language you've taken there. Can I just point out, if you're shifting from subsidies to ad hoc 0 to 200% tariffs to a low common tariff, that's exactly what was recommended in GATT. The original push towards free markets was, let's first replace all of these subsidies and ad hoc tariffs and quotas with tariffs. The first step in GATT was the tarification of all of the other protection measures, because tariffs are a better form of protection. Tariffs are a less harmful form of protection than all the other forms of protection. Then once you tariffize, they argued.
Look at this EU FTA degree we've just signed. We will take off our tariffs, which aren't much, of course, but we're going to let the EU continue to subsidise all of its industries in the most distortive, protectionist way known to man. It's a total joke.
Yeah. So anyway, there's some agreement on that one. Gene, you were about to say.
Oh, I was just wondering on the NDIS, Matt. I mean, that just seems to be it's just a monster that's eating the budget, isn't it? So, I mean, what are your plans there? Are you going to be developing detailed policy with NDIS? Because
we support what the government's trying to do. That's going to be our first response. We don't have to try and oppose everything. We're not in government, so we can't redesign it all ourselves. But finally, the government has taken this issue seriously. We tried to do these things when we were in government. Linda Reynolds put up a solid fist at it, but Bill Shorten just totally walked away from it and played politics with it, accusing us of stripping disabled people from money and the likes. So, look, we're back to square one now. We've lost a few years, but we'll do our best. I suppose the one thing I'd add, going back to the more philosophical discussion, is, look, I do question whether or not opening the floodgates to profit-making entities to otherwise charitable activities has been a smart idea. As I say, this was the NDIS talking about accountability, and I love the Productivity Commission. They gave me a start in life, but the Productivity Commission recommended the NDIS, and in truth, they didn't foresee any of these, or certainly didn't foresee it enough. These massive perverse outcomes of creating a market for disabled services. That was the idea. The idea would be you would have a market, we let individuals effectively have a form of voucher, and, going back to your mate, Milton Friedman, like a voucher, where they would go and spend at different disabled service providers, consistent with their disability. And that would drive efficiency, and, business would do what they do, and disabled people would be served better, and money would go further, etc. Well, none of that's been true compared to the former model of blocked funding to entities that had their heart in it, that wanted to care for deaf people, wanted to care for blind people. The disabled people I speak to, they get worse services, and it costs a hell of a lot more. So it's been absolutely terrible. Now, look, I don't know. We've got this system now, so we can't just walk away from some of the most vulnerable people in our community. They do deserve support, and it is something that government should seek to, or we all should seek to provide to people in those circumstances. But yeah, it's I just worry that we've opened the door to shonks. But even I should say, there's those that are just totally, and we've got to clamp down on that. And can have some of that always, particularly when you're going to allow people to take profits. But I don't know, even just the corporate sector that's doing otherwise a good thing, is that better than a charitable organisation, a faith-based organisation that provides care to people out of the goodness of their heart? I'm questioning.
So I think in partial defence of Productivity Commission, I think the Productivity Commission had suggested a slightly different model, and it got a little bit warped in the implementation phase. But you're quite right. I think the easy thing to do is to point to the rorters in the system. If we got rid of all the rorters in the system's still growing way too fast. And that's because we've now, and you probably can't say this, but we've got a massive subsidy for parents to suddenly discover that little Johnny has ADHD or autism. And once you give them a massive subsidy for that, suddenly every fifth mum, it seems, discovers that their little boy suddenly has ADHD and autism.
I've heard those stories too. It's incredibly saddening to hear. I've heard parents doctor shopping so they get their child a disability.
But again, I don't even blame the parents.
I can say that. I mean, in fairness, to give the government their due, that is one thing they're doing, as well as the trying to clamp down on the rorters and that. They are creating a new scheme for kids on autism and ADHD, which will be separate from the NDIS. So they are trying to limit the scope. And I'll give the Productivity Commission their due. That they certainly did not envisage a scheme that would cover these types of disabilities. That's been scope creep through the implementation of the scheme, although I think the broader philosophical design is pretty consistent with the Productivity Commission. So yes, we should do that. I support that. Look, we've got this ridiculous situation. The state governments seem to all get a vote here. It took our government about a year to get sex-based services, brothels basically, delisted from funding from the NDIS because the state governments wouldn't agree. So there was a period there where you could go to a brothel as a disabled person and get the government to pay for that. Now, that's gone, fortunately. But as I say, it took a long time. I heard from a hairdresser this week. I've been doing a lot of small business roundtables. Hairdresser said she's making good money giving shampoos to disabled people because they've got too much anxiety to wash their own hair, and they get paid by the taxpayer to go to her.
And with a fixed amount as well, so they don't even work in about the best price for the shampoo. I got to just quickly say, look, it's not great that people are doctor shopping, but the primary blame for that I put down to the policymakers who created the incentives, not the members of the public who followed the incentives they were given. The incentive makers.
On that one, I think we can. That's not it's not right anyway. But I get what you're saying, John. I get what you're saying, but
if you create an incentive for crime, you will get more crime. It's not the incentive.
I know, but you still blame not that these people are criminals, but you can still blame those doing that. Yeah.
Well, I think you always can get a second opinion, can't you? I mean, we know with doctors, I mean, there may be benefits to getting a second opinion at times. So, yeah, I tend to...
One option is just replace it all with block grants to the states, and the states take it over again.
Well, that's what we did. That's what we had before.
A question here. Look, maybe we're coming up to close to 10, so we won't keep you much longer. This might be the last one. And this is more a comment, but I'm going to turn it into a question. I think this goes to what you said earlier, Matt. So I think this person's challenging you. Indeed, given the other questions, I know they're challenging you. When you were talking about, I think, Pauline Hanson's comment about monocultural and how, we take all sorts. And Anna has responded here that immigration is the thing that has been destroying our culture, Matt. And you can take this as a jumping off point for a discussion about the immigration level. It seems One Nation has carved out a niche quite successfly as being strict on immigration.
And look, I'm not these comments. I'm not directing at One Nation. I'm answering the question, but I would rephrase to say that no, what is destroying our culture is mass uncontrolled migration. A sensible and controlled migration program has actually been extremely healthy for our nation. In my view, I'm a product of that. My grandparents came here from Italy. I wouldn't be here without that. And just as I said, I've been to Griffith recently, where you've got a wonderful Italian community, a wonderful Sikh community. They've been there for a long time. So a lot of Sikhs have come here to farm in our country because they live in the Punjab, one of the best farming districts of India. And they are hard workers, great people in the community, and it's been a wonderful thing for our country. So it's just about managing that and getting back to that balance. So, look, I do worry that if the government doesn't act here, because there is like 2/3 of Australians want this dealt with. They want massive cuts to our migration program, massive change. The government has its head in the sand and not doing anything, or at least keeping migration way above where it should be. And that's causing us backlash. And I'm seeing online for the first time in my life, lots of people supporting a white Australia policy and all these things. Like, I just find that anathema, and I'm totally against that, totally against basing judgments on people's skin color or judging them on their ethnicity. It's just, I don't want to live in a country. It's not consistent with Christian values that I'm a Christian. But you're right. And what we said before, you create these conditions, we're all human beings, you get this kind of backlash. And that's, we've got to put a stop to that. I wish this government would listen, but if they don't, they should be tossed out and get someone there who does actually listen to people and hopefully does so in a sensible way.
Yeah, and one thing I'm wondering is to what extent we've allowed our culture to be eroded in a way, haven't we? So, because we've lost our belief in the values of Western civilization, haven't we? We've let ourselves.
Yeah, but that's not migration. The other point to make here that I should have made, that is not because of migration. We've done that to ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, see, I'm much, much more concerned at a cultural level about the woke mind virus than I am about migration. Yes, the current migration settings are wrong, and we haven't got the right standards in place. It's causing issues. But the bigger concern for me as a parent is the crap that's taught to my kids in our own schools, not by migrants, and not people coming here doing that. It's a insidious. It's a much more insidious poison that has gone through Western society, where we have sought to throw out all the wisdom that had accumulated in our wonderful, wonderful civilization. And we're teaching children now that they can be different genders, they can be animals. I don't know. It's just weird, crazy stuff. And the worst thing, that they're getting adherents, right? That is actually converting some of our children to this woke religion. Whereas I'd say with something like radical Islam, which is a big issue, need to deal with it. It's not like lots of our young people are suddenly converting to the Islamic faith. That's not happening. They are converting to the woke faith. And I think it's equally as destructive, just on the different extreme. And it's something we have to do more to challenge. We can't, in my view, I'm just worried we think that we've just closed our border, just deal with the radical Islam issue, everything will be fine. I don't think so. I think there's a much, much bigger threat here to our culture. We've got to deal with ourselves.
Yeah, well, that's why I was going to put a different spin on the immigration issue, and one that I think is going to be tricky for a party of government to deal with. A big chunk of the net overseas migration is students coming in, as you'd know. And a lot of these students are effectively, by being full fee paying, propping up the university system, as we have shifted to a model where it's more of the universities are surviving on the basis of bringing in this funding from overseas students. So we've got this pressure on the one hand to get the NOM, the net overseas migration, down, which a lot of it is the students, but the university model kind of needs them. Now, my easy solution is just get down the NOM anyway and let the universities collapse, because I think at this point they're a net drain on our society, teaching all the kids the woke mind virus. I say that as someone who spent too long at a university, and I think far too many people go to university. But that's an easy thing for me to say. I don't think a party of government could say that or get away with saying it. So given you probably don't have that get out of jail free card that I have, how do you square the circle?
I want our universities to thrive. We need a strong research-based university system. In fact, I'd love
How to
to
fund
see
them.
our universities do better. I think they can do better. They do some great stuff, but obviously we'd love to be even for higher up the league tables, all those things. I want to see that happen. Oh, look, I've got a good education from you too,
fair enough.
John.
I shouldn't have taken. I shouldn't have taken that flight of fancy because
I got to give great credit to both Seeker University, University of Queensland. Both my sons do mechanical engineering, one doing aerospace at UQ. They do amazing stuff. Amazing. So there's lots of good things happening at universities.
I shouldn't have taken that flight of fancy because that wasn't the point of the question. The point of the question was how to fund the universities if we're going to cut back on the number of foreign students.
Well, we have to cut back on them. It's a total scam because, I think I don't actually agree with your, I suppose, prognosis that somehow this is helping our universities. I think it's slowly destroying our universities.
It's funding them.
Skewing. Well, I get it's funding them, mate, but you know what it's like. What does that money go to, John? You probably know
there's
better than me.
Buildings when we went through.
Does the money really improve education?
More admin stuff.
I think,
But if you did take away one stream of revenue from the universities, they're going to then want to put up prices or ask for a bigger government handout, and the government doesn't have spare money.
I got that. Okay. But so look, the problem I think it's skewing our universities to just be these pipelines for permanent residency. That's what these student visas are being sold as. They're not being sold as an education degree. They're sold in India and other countries to here's your ticket to come to Australia. And I don't blame the people doing it. I'd love to come to Australia. So I can understand it, but it's not what our universities should be aimed at. And so we need to refocus the objective of our universities back to educating Australians primarily. So therefore, and doing high quality research, which helps all Australians. So look, there may be this funding hole. I'm happy to talk to universities about that. I'm all ears. Now, we don't have an empty bucket of money to help them out with it, but maybe there's a deal that can be made here. Let's talk to them. Maybe there can be a grand bargain where, we'll do that, but we'll help you do in some other ways. I'd say if we're going to do that, John, as you say, they'd have to also refocus back on our own country and what's important to Australia. And there's probably a lot of other things they can drop and efficiencies they can make to refocus on those objectives.
Well, one option would be to double the HECS or double the fees that domestic students pay for any degree. Wait. Well, let me finish the sentence. That for any degree that ends with the word studies.
All right, I'll leave you that one. I don't know. Well.
Anyway, Matt, thank you very much for coming in and joining us. I appreciate it on short notice as well.
It's good chat.
Into a little podcast to put yourself in front of the schmucks and ne'er-do-wells that roam around these parts. So I appreciate it, Matt, very much. When we leave, normally the last thing I do in wrapping up is I ask, and I'll throw to Jean first, and then you can go next, Matt. Jean, from this conversation, anything interesting or noteworthy that you're going to take with you?
Look, I'm keen to learn more about Matt's plans for the opening up the country. I thought the discussion about the irrigation dams was good. So I think it's just finding the right locations for those and then looking at how we can have those help support regional cities, decentralize the population. I think if you have that as part of a coherent plan, that could be very attractive. So I'd like to see more on that, and I think that's something where you could differentiate yourself. So I thought that was really, really fascinating.
Excellent, thank you. And Matt, any takeaway from this or any last thoughts that you want to leave us with?
Well, I just want to congratulate you guys. You're two of the best economic minds in the country. So good on you for doing stuff like this. We just have this desperate need for this right now, right? So I hope you're getting a good viewing. And I enjoyed the chat. So a bit longer than I thought it was going to go for, but that's okay. Still get my bedtime.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Matt. And thank you, everyone who has been listening in. There's got about 4,000 of you there at the moment. And anyone listening along later. Right. But please do share this around with other people. And this is brought to you by the Australian Taxpayers Alliance. You can find us at taxpayers.org.au and our Substack at AusTaxpayers, AUSTaxpayers.substack.com. Please go along, check them out, sign up to our check them out. Sign up to our newsletter. It's only one email a week. We don't inundate you. You can sign up for free, but if you're the sort of person with money, you can also sign up for a paid option where you get nothing extra, but you help us to stay afloat. So if you do have the money, please do consider helping us and pitching in that way. Well, we do this every Thursday at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Time. So please do join us again next week. But until then, everyone, thanks for joining us. Stay happy and stay free.